black is all I know, there ain't a thing that I would change in it.
And that's why one of the beauties of being black is being able to embrace it and to say how #proud to be we are. Now it's Black History Month, and I keep saying the same thing. It ain't for us, baby. It is not for us, but it is definitely a space where we can educate ourselves and other communities about why we are #proud to be black. Okay, and I know I am proud to be melanated. Means I can wear blue eyeshadow. No, I'm joking.
I'm black and I'm proud. I'm black and I'm proud. I'm black and I'm proud. I'm black and I'm proud.
But it means so much more than that. And so what I wanted to do for this year's Black History Month was each week of the month celebrate a living, breathing, walking Black history hero, okay, that graces us with their gifts each and every day. And so this week, the person who I want to do a shout out for and to speak on is Lord Simon Woolley. Okay, now what I love is this is a man who set up an organisation called Operation Black Vote in 1996, and because of him that it vastly increased the number of black MPs that we see today. So, you know, we talk about the Diane Abbotts of this world, and I mean, she's another one, do you know what I mean? Really has been a trailblazer for showing black women that they have a space and place in politics, and for leading that charge for so many years. But then you have individuals like Lord Woolley, who outside of a political setting has worked hard for inequalities to the point where he is of course notable for it and respected. Later on this year he will become the first black man to head an Oxbridge college. And I remember going to Oxford many years ago when I was looking at options for university, and honestly not wanting to go there. The pros for me with Oxford was basically I think every professor only looked after 2 students at that time. So literally you would have a dedicated professor throughout your Oxford career, which is huge for the amount of studying you need to do. But conversely to that, I had spent 7 years in a school where there were less than a handful of young girls who looked like me and who had any kind of experience that I had in terms of coming from an African Caribbean background. I did not want to go to university with nobody. Okay, with nobody. There was somebody I needed to talk about rice and peas with, and that was not going to be at Oxford University. And I actually remember going there and thoroughly enjoying my time there, but thinking this isn't for me, and I didn't even apply. I didn't want to go. But back to the man at hand. So in the mid-90s, as I say, Simon Woolley really believed that British politics was largely indifferent to minority communities. And so in the mid-90s, and of course we had seen things like in 1995 the riots in Brixton in South London.
People are understandably and I think justifiably angry that yet another young black man has died in police custody.
And of course that was after Wayne Douglas, who at the time was a 26-year-old black man, had died in police custody. And again, there'd been a spate of robberies. There'd been all sorts of difficulties going on. And Paul Condon, who was the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police at the time, had written a letter to 40 black community leaders saying that many of the perpetrators of muggings were very young black people. Thanks for that, Paul. Many of the perpetrators of, and this was the McPherson report that came out of this, which then found that there was institutional racism in the Met, okay? Now, there were just 7 ethnic minority MPs in Parliament at that time. And according to Simon Woolley, he said black people were going into police cells fit and healthy and coming out in body bags. And he said, so in July 1996, he launched the Operation Black Vote, which was outside of the House of Commons. And he said, he said, we've got to stop rioting and we've got to start to seize power. And I think what I love about Simon Woolley's ethos is that it's always been, and do you know what, this is my viewpoint. I think we all have different ways to protest, and we all have different ways to express things that we are unhappy with. For some people it is to leave the organization or to step away and to protest very loudly in that way, and that is perfectly fine. For others it is to take placards up, and it is to go out onto the streets, and it is to let people know that we are dissatisfied. But I think for me, and I sort of see aspects of this in Lord Woolley, it's about making change from within a structure and actually looking at the basis of where the problem is and tackling it there. And what he realized was, if there were more political faces in the political arena, there were more black faces in the political arena, that within itself was probably going to shift and create some change in dynamics for how we as black people are and were perceived. And that's where the concept for Operation Black Vote came from. So the name was a subversive nod, he said, to controversial police activities such as Operation Swamp 81, in which Brixton was flooded with police who stopped and searched more than 1,000 people in 6 days. It led to the 1981 uprising. But again, for somebody who maybe was thinking about revolutionising a space, he was looking at it from a very democratic standpoint. And so the attempt was to leverage the black vote. This is an organisation that is still going real strong until today. In the 1992 general election, John Major had won a majority of 21 seats. More than 50 of those had African, Asian and Caribbean voters, and it was the greatest winning party margin that they had seen to gain their victory. The black vote could make a difference, and that's what it demonstrated, and that was what Lord Woolley also saw as being particularly important. So 25 years on, and we just see success from him all round. The number of black and ethnic minority MPs has increased to 65. In 2018, Theresa May chose Woolley to form Number 10's Race Disparity Unit. The 59-year-old has worked with 3 prime ministers as well as civil rights leaders such as Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. And in October, Lord Woolley of Woodford, by the way, because everybody who's a lord is a lord of a place, just in case you didn't know, okay? So, you know, he of Woodford, which is, of course, in London. And he left school at 16, as I say, will become this month the first black man to head an Oxford College as a principal of Homerton College, Cambridge. Speaking speaking earlier in the week, he just said it was a wonderful opportunity and he was really happy, and that he thought that a great institution like the University of Cambridge could be a beacon for council house kids to aspire to. And there's been so much work being done with Lord Woolley and others to push black children towards elite institutions. We're talking about a man who was born in Hinckley in Leicestershire in 1961. He grew up in St Matthew's in Leicester with his adopted parents. He said, "My mother was a childminder, so our house was full of kids between half a dozen and 10 at a time." St Matthew's was mostly a deprived city, but when he was young, most of it was also white working class residents on council estates. He said racism was rife. However, the expulsion of Asians from Uganda and their exodus from Kenya had started to change demographics. And he said the local tectonic plates, I love his language, shifted dramatically, and that empowered the National Front. He said as a 9-year-old, he remembered helplessly as crowds of and groups of skinheads would savagely beat elderly Asian men. He said as kids we knew racism, we saw the skinheads, when we grew up we fought them. His older brother Mick taught him first to use his fists in an answer to racially motivated bullying at primary school, and he said when this guy comes to pick on you again, whack him and whack him again. He said I learned how to be perceived as a great fighter. He said but I wasn't. It's just what I had to do to protect myself. And then as he grew older and started to see more and more of the things that were happening around him, he started to have a passion for taking a stance and for doing something about it. His initial job was as a car mechanic, and he said it was a job that he enjoyed. He said, but your nails would just get caked up with dirt. And he said it didn't help when he was out looking for girls. But at 19, he moved to the south. He got into sales and started selling showers and coffee machines and all sorts of things. Eventually he went into advertising, and he was so successful that he bought his own house at 21 years old. He said, but there was something missing. He just knew there was a greater calling for him, and he ended up going back to university to do a degree in politics and Spanish at Middlesex University. He later travelled to Latin America, visiting Colombia, and he said that was in the days of Pablo Escobar, and the politics bug just bit him. He's like, I encountered people dying for their values, and when I came back I said to myself, I'm not going to get shot, I'm not going to get kidnapped, nothing's going to stop me from changing the world. When he got back, he joined Charter 88. That's a group that campaigned for electoral reform. It was influential, but he felt that it was just too easily ignored, and he said so many people felt powerless. And instead, his eureka moment came when he realised that we needed to get every party vying for the black vote. The black struggle does not have to be the luxury of waiting for the perfect prime minister, and that is when his work in that regard began. He's only ever gone from strength to strength from there, and I've had the pleasure of having him on the show here, and I've spoken to Lord Woolley on more than one occasion, and he's just such a gracious man who makes time for people. You would think that a man of his stature would take the attitude of, do you know what, go and speak to my assistant, or go and do something else, or go and speak to someone else, and he just never does that. He will always take the time, no matter when I call him, Friday evenings, Saturday mornings, Sunday afternoon. I don't suggest you do that, by the way. I've always had a really good reason if I've done it, but he's just always been so gracious. So in this Black History Month of 2021, where we are proud to be, I have to say I am proud to have someone like Lord Simon Woolley representing our community, and we thank him for the work that he continues to do, and really continues to do. If you want to learn more about him, I'm going to post links on my website for more information about him, the books he's written, the things he's been involved in. He's a formidable man, and again, just another light that inspires us all to be the very best version of ourselves. Makes me think of Black Panther, you know, Wakanda forever. This one's Lady Leisha, and we'll be back in a few moments to talk about digital divides.